Well, at no surprise, it looks like Kathleen Kennedy is at it once again when she has been describing her views on the Star Wars community, the Star Wars franchise as a whole, and how things really just did not go her way, and the way things were actually done with the sequels, and a lot more on top of that really kind of gives the fans a vivid and more accurate view of exactly what Kathleen Kennedy believes when it comes to the Star Wars philosophy. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. And let's get right into the subject. Now, one thing about Kathleen Kennedy is that she has been endlessly putting down the fans, downplaying the Star Wars fandom, and really just blaming and pointing fingers at them for creating the fan division and the current problems with the Star Wars franchise as a whole. So that brings us to the latest of what Kathleen Kennedy had to say about a very specific thing related to the overall structure of the fandom, the community at heart, and exactly where that's all going, basically going to go. Now, everything related to Kathleen Kennedy is always about pointing fingers. We've talked about this endlessly before in the past. However, Kathleen Kennedy recently has been in a very problematic situation involving both the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew, after initiating various reshoots and rewrites for both projects. However, in a recent interview that Kennedy got involved in, she went on to state the following to the entire community when questioned about the fan division. I just think where the fans are now and why there are so many against with what we are doing with our vision is that they had way too high expectations with this brand. They expected everything that they actually thought of from the books to be adapted into live action, and that wasn't going to be the case. When I joined LUCASFILM and began working on the sequels, we knew we couldn't just use the Legends or EU material. It would have been lazy storytelling and too much like a copy and paste attitude with the films. Okay, so here's the thing about this, relating to Kathleen Kennedy, that I think is really just her being a hypocrite. She's saying here that using the Legend stories would have been essentially copying older Star Wars, tales into live action. Basically, what she's saying here is that she did exactly what she did with The Force Awakens. That was almost like a carbon copy of A New Hope. You had a trench run, you had Starkiller Base, which was basically the Death Star. I mean, the list goes on and on. So I don't know why she's pointing fingers at the Legends stories and the fans who wanted that to be adapted into live action as quote-unquote copying or being lazy by using the Legends tales into the movies. And by the way, she's also being a little bit, hypocritical too here, because she always likes to claim that she never copies material or never wants to, copy material, and then she did with the sequels to a degree. If you look at things very closely, you will realize. And there's a moment here where she's contradicting things. A couple of years ago, she said that there was no source material to pull from, and that no source material even existed. And now she's actually acknowledging Star Wars Legends. So that just goes to show you that her stories always change, they always go back and forth. Moving on. So she goes on to elaborate. We didn't want to be like that. We wanted to explore new characters like Rey, Finn, and Poe. There was, of course, and this is to this day, no source material to pull from that would have fit the sequel movies. See, now she's being specific. And to us, the Legends stuff wasn't really movie material anyway. These stories were not compatible to be put into live action or on the big screen. They were told like books and comics and held a bit of an unrealistic style to them that just wouldn't be so fluid on the big screen. It was something that we needed to work on quickly to ignore that stuff and to just focus on the new. And to this day, I will never understand why so many fans have an issue with the Legends lore not being adapted properly with the past 3 films. So again, Kathleen Kennedy once again putting down, live action Legends lore and how she feels it would have been unrealistic to do anything like that. And look, we've seen John and Dave pull specific key elements from Legends into the Mandoverse, and it worked magically. It really did. So I don't know where she's getting these ideas from that using the Legends stories in live action would be way too unrealistic, that it would never work on the big screen, that it's not suitable for live action because the books are told in a certain way that it could not even possibly be told in the form of a movie or a live action show. Again, I think that this is just Kathleen Kennedy kind of putting up a shield or a brick wall in front of her to just, make up, specific, excuses about why she did not use heavy Legends lore in the sequels. A lot of fans would agree they would have loved to see things like Jaina and Jason Solo as the Solo twins in the movies and stuff like that, and the Skywalker child, Ben Skywalker, stuff like that, in live action. Kathleen Kennedy specifically did not want to do that, as unveiled here, because she felt the Legend stories just would not be able to be told in live action. And that is just insane, I think that it would have worked out perfectly if they executed things out well. It would have felt more original. It would have felt more proper with the use of the whole family aspect. But moving on to the next thing here, on to the conclusion, she states, "To me, the majority never read any of those books or those comics. And that expanding the Skywalkers and other character arcs, it was just one of those things that we needed to cut away from and not rely on the sequel films, let alone for any other project that we were working on at the time. We felt it was the best thing to do to save the fluidity of the Star Wars franchise." And she's talking about the fluidity, and what she means by that is how these movies or shows, whatever have you, these projects pace themselves. She felt that the Legend stories would not be able to be paced perfectly or well on screen. I think it would have been, if not way better than what we got in the current sense of what the sequel trilogy movies are. Not only would it have been original, it would have been a thing that was adapted that already exists, that fans actually really already were very attached to. And look, there's some stories I will agree that in Legends, they're out of this, realm craziness, but it wouldn't have worked on screen for some stories, but a lot of Legends tales would have worked amazingly on the actual big screen in movies, and that's what Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau stand for, and what they really want to adapt, into live action. They want to take those Legends stories and do whatever they can. That's why they're going on these endless retcons to change the course of the Skywalker saga timeline. That's ultimately what they are doing right now with the overall structure of the franchise. That's what they are gearing up to do in order to really just provide something special for fans. So, again, Kathleen Kennedy downplaying the fans, downplaying Legends and what it really is, it was actually something that the core fan base enjoyed dearly and they cherished for over 20-something years. Throughout the 90s and the 2000s, we had endless books and comics leading up to the final book, Crucible, in 2013, a year after Disney acquired LUCASFILM. So, anyways, guys, fill me in below in the comments what you all have to say about this, about Kathleen Kennedy. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.
From night to moon we hear